There was an old timer from way back in the Pioneer. One of the old Norwegians was famous for saying, Galapagos is a hell of a place, but every place else is worse. Living here is not easy. It's, in a lot of ways, it's physically and psychologically really demanding. I came here when I was 19 years old. And of course, it was very different then. There was only about 300 people on this island. And there was no road, no electricity, no communications. It was just, you know, it was really pioneering. It's so beautiful every day. It doesn't matter if it's day or night or raining or clear or whatever. It's always spectacular.
When Jack Nelson first came to the Galapagos Islands, he found a place rarely touched by the human footprint. Aside from a scientist, some pirates, and other world travelers, the islands had for many years gone untouched. Years later, as more humans discovered the secret of the Galapagos, tourism became an economic investment too good to give up.
Well, there's certainly been, I would say, stages in the development of tourism here. In the first years, it was like adventure tourism. It was very much improvised day by day. There was no real functional national park. There was no limits, controls. There was no guides licensing. It was just somebody would put together a boat and start running some kind of tours. Well, it was certainly a lot more fun for us when it was very casual. It was as much an adventure for us as it was for the tourists.
Shortly after the national park was created on the islands, opportunities for tourism increased. Airlines made the Galapagos only a short flight away from Quito, Ecuador, and roads allowed people to move across the islands in hours compared to days. While these enhancements made life on the Galapagos easier, they modified the type of tourism on the islands. A few footprints suddenly became many.
Tourism became dominated by cruise ships and large cruise yachts. There were more and more restrictions and requirements came on, and the expectations of tourists changed.
Compared to 12,000 visitors in 1979, the Galapagos now hosts over 150,000 visitors annually. With this in mind, author Carol Bassett writes that the islands stand at a critical crossroads: to heal and endure as one of the world's most intact natural museums, or to lose most of their biodiversity to human encroachment. Whether it's carbon emissions produced in traveling to the islands, or oil spills produced by tankers fueling yachts, the destructive nature of tourism is clearly evident on the islands. Despite this evidence, tourists share many different thoughts on the health of the islands, the definition of ecotourism, and whether change is needed.
The Galapagos, of course, are very, very special.
I'm from Kansas City, Missouri, and I'm here to do one of the most incredible things I've ever seen, is the Galapagos. I've always wanted to come.
Ecotourism, something you can do environmentally safe, right? Ecologically safe.
We are coming closer to the limit that the Galapagos can resist this. If we increasing more, I think that for sure we'll be destroying the Galapagos.
But I don't think a tourism would be environmental in the near future, because tourism is a business, right? So I don't think big businesses are really worried about ecology.
I like to see that our children inherit something that we saw. I mean, what's the use, you know? If we destroy everything, there's nothing left.
Ecotourism, and I have to wing it.
When I went from Norway to Ecuador 4 months ago, and I'm going back in 2 weeks now, I bought, what is it called, climate quote or something?
I can easily see how this place would become over-touristed, over-visited.
Of course you can buy climate quotes, but I don't think that's the ultimate solution, but I guess it's easy just to shut your eyes for the problems.
We're gonna cruise around all of the islands and take a look, hopefully see some turtles. I was hoping to ride one, but that might be too much of an environmental impact.
But, you know, we're human. we're going to take over. Unfortunately, that's our nature to come in and change things.
While most tourists rarely interact with Galapagos, their presence fuels the very need for these Ecuadorians. And as more tourists come, more workers are required to meet that demand, but often at heavy prices to the environment. The impact of transportation, food, water, and sewage dramatically rises with a higher population.
When I first came to the Galapagos Islands here in Puerto Ayora, they were about 2,200 people, now 20,000. The rest of the islands in Isabela, about 80, Floreana, 10, and now the total population might be around 30,000. Who is now local? When I first came to the islands, they were locals. They were the Angelmeyers, they were the Wittmers. Those were the locals, because before that, no people in the islands.
Almost everything comes from outside. We have chicken, fish, and beef here, but overwhelmingly the fruits and vegetables all come from the outside. So they're shipped in from the mainland, and that's a huge vector for new species and all the rest of that business. The uninspected cargo that comes in, you know, other supplies, so construction supplies and on and on and on, that come in on ships that aren't really fumigated or inspected, or there's just no resources for it. When you flew in here, your luggage was passed through an X-ray machine to see if you had, you know, flowers or fresh cheese or something like that. But that doesn't really, you know, a freight boat comes in here with 1,000 tons. Virtually no way of inspecting it.
People, they live here, they make money out of tourism, of course. There are hotels, every day are more hotels, more boats. When we started, 15,000 people were visiting the islands. Now it's over 100,000 a year.
Over and over and over, there's been studies that say, well, it should be capped 25,000. Well, that year that they finally come up with the 25,000 figure, it's already 35,000. And then they say, well, it should be stopped at 75,000, and that year it was at 90. And I think it's just not socially or economically realistic to, you know, put a fixed number down and have so many tourists can come, period. In our social and economic reality here, on the short term, trying to change the way operations are done, you don't get big results. It's really, really difficult.
I prefer my beginning of you know, the 70s, 80s here was incredible. Nobody would steal anything. You could leave your shoes in front of your house. Now, as more people come in, more difficult. It's like all over the world.
As the Earth's wild places dwindle, it's up to both tourists and tour operators to stand up and be accountable. In providing a sustainable platform as the only option, tour operators have the ability to completely transform the type of tourism that reaches the islands. Tourists will always come, but they have the power of knowledge and can choose forms of tourism that are sustainable. Will the Galapagos be saved, or will it be left to perish at the hands of mass tourism?